Welcome back everyone, Jason Cox here again, and this is the module on universal export settings in Premiere Pro. In this first video we're going to take a brief look at changing aspect ratios on export, as well as selecting a specific range of your sequence you might want to export. So if you haven't done so already, go ahead and open up the sequence called aspect ratio / source range. We've got a quick little sequence here, and I'm going to take this sequence and of course go to the export media window. And what we're going to do is take a look over here on the far left. Now, as we've discussed in previous videos, you might often say come here and choose H.264 ProRes, and since most of those are modern HD formats in most cases, usually you're exporting to 16 by 9. Your source material was 16 by 9, so the rectangle fits perfectly into the same aspect ratio rectangle. But what if you have a client who asks you to export to some other aspect ratio than what your native footage was? For example, perhaps they need it as DV NTSC. In fact, that's the default setting that when you first come to this window. So for example, if I were to select QuickTime and the default preset NTSC DV, that is a 4 by 3 aspect ratio, not 16 by 9. So what does it do with your 16 by 9 footage? Well, the default in Premiere is that we can see up here under source scaling, it scales to fit. So it takes that 16 by 9 image and scales it so that it fits within that 4 by 3 box. Now, this often is going to lead to letterboxing, which are the black bars you see at the top and bottom. In some other scenarios, the other way around, you might actually have pillars on the left and right if you're taking, say, 4 by 3 up to a 16 by 9 aspect ratio. Now, you have options here, although to be honest with you, 9 times out of 10, you're probably going to leave this as scale to fit. But under here we do have scale to fill. That blows up the image a bit more, or to fill the frame so you don't have the letterboxing. Of course, this isn't a great result because it's cropped the image. I've lost some of the left part of the image and the right part of the image. We also have stretch to fill, and that's probably the worst of all. This is when it distorts our image and has stretched it or squished it to fit into that particular frame. So it's squished our 16 by 9, stretched it out, up and down really, which makes our characters here look a little bit skinny and beanpole-ish. So again, most of the time, you're going to keep this to scale to fit. Now, moving on from aspect ratio options, we also have source range options. Now, you would assume if you knew really nothing about this window and you came to it for the first time and all you did was hit export here, that it would export your whole sequence. And most of the time that's true, but not necessarily. And that's because the default is actually for your sequence in and out points. Now, if you have no in and out points set in your sequence, then you're okay. It's definitely going to export the entire sequence. But if you had accidentally left some in, you're only going to export that range of your project. Now, that's good to know that you can do that real quick. If I just came in here and said, well, you know what, I really only need to export the first half of my project. So here I am just hitting I and O around a few clips. And then went back to export media. Now we kind of see this blue bar gives us a relative idea of how much is being exported. But if you came here and said, oh no, I didn't want that, I wanted the whole sequence, you can just quickly come here and choose entire sequence. It's really up to you. You have a couple other options here. Work area, that's not utilized as often as it used to be in Premiere, but if you don't know what that is, let me clear out these in and outs real quick with Option X. The work area can be brought up by going to the panel menu for the sequence and choosing work area bar. Now, this can be used to set like a render area. It's a little gray bar that pops up, and you can use this to say, oh, I only want to render from here to here in my timeline. Again, not utilized quite as often anymore in Premiere. But if you did have it set to a specific range, and I went back to the export media window and I chose work area, well, and then it's only going to export that range of the timeline. Again, if I had that set by accident, if I did have my work area displayed, I can go to entire sequence. And last but not least, also very straightforward, is custom. That just gives you full control right here in the export settings window. If you just say, well, you know what, I want to just export from here to here, you just grab the little triangles at the ends of the blue bar. That's really it. And then if I were to hit export, then it would just export that range of my project. So those are the few details you want to know about source scaling and source range.